Oh. Nice of them to leave a gavel out for me to make me feel nostalgic. I have the problem we all have when we speak here. There are a lot of issues to talk about. So the question is, which ones do you pick? There are a number that interest me, like why it is that so many Republicans are afraid that my marriage will threaten theirs, or why Mitt Romney thinks it's a bad thing that the president ended the war in Iraq. But let's stick to the central themes of the economy. We need to do more to get the economy back. Now, we inherited from the Republicans the worst economy in 80 years, and we have been improving it over their objection and over their obstruction, but we'd like to move quicker. Well, one argument we get is that the Republican nominee, Mr. Romney, because of his private business experience, is a superior job creator, and that if we elect him president, he will use those great private sector skills as a chief executive to bring many more jobs. We've had an experiment in that. He was governor of the state I lived in Massachusetts. So if, in fact, Mitt Romney's private sector experience makes him the superhero of job creation, we would have seen that in Massachusetts. In fact, the record is that during his term, our job growth was only about 1.4%, which was a quarter of the national average. We were, under Mitt Romney, 47th in job growth. In fact, I represented an area in Massachusetts, proudly, places, New Bedford and Fall River, that have been hurt by national and international economic trends. And we wanted help to get commuter rail to the source of the jobs in the northern part of our state. We wanted to get a wind energy node projected. We wanted all these things. Under Mitt Romney, we got no help. Under Mitt Romney, we got no jobs. Now, I was puzzled, and I hear about this, and I wonder, how come, as I now hear about the great ability of this wizard of private sector financial engineering to create jobs, that we didn't get any? And I realize here is the problem. And this is a hard one for me because of my diction, so please listen carefully. It turns out our governor was Mitt Romney. What we should have had as governor was Myth Romney. Myth Romney is a wonderful private sector executive who, when he moves into the public sector, can transform it. I wish Myth Romney had been governor of the state I lived in. If it had been Myth Romney, I'd probably be riding the commuter train from New Bedford to Boston right now. But we had Mitt Romney, and so we had to wait for the great Deval Patrick to get that started. Now, maybe as a Democrat, I should be grateful that we got Mitt and not Myth. Because if Mitt Romney had ever been governor and done all the things we're told he can do, he would have been reelected overwhelmingly. Now, that might not have been good for the Democrats, but not following the Mitch McConnell view that your party's advantage is more important than the economic well-being of your constituents, I would have taken that. But we didn't have Myth Romney. We had Mitt Romney, and he did the Democrats a favor, not the state. After 4 consecutive Republican elections, when Mitt Romney ran for re-election, his term was up, he was afraid to run for re-election. He gallantly let his lieutenant governor take the fall, and the Republicans haven't won a major election on statewide office since, for state office. Well, if we didn't get that job experience, if we can't look to the past to be reassured, let's look to the future. What will any Romney, and you know there were a lot of Romneys. There's the Romney who was going to be better on gay rights than Ted Kennedy. Now there's the Romney who checks with Rick Santorum on that issue. There was the Romney who was for climate change, and now there's the Romney who believes that it's a myth, to coin a phrase. But let's look at what we have from the Mitt Romney who's running for president. He has now basically committed himself to repeat every failed and mistaken policy that the Republican Party employed to bring our country into the greatest recession in years, and which they have followed to try to retard its recovery. And there's a reason for it. For all of the talk about how Mitt Romney understands the private sector, and that clearly is a little bit iffy, he has no understanding whatsoever of the public sector. Of course we want a private sector that is prosperous, that creates jobs. This hall is full of people I know who have been successful in the private sector and do that, and are entrepreneurs and business people. But sensible people also know in a civilized society, you need a public sector to do those things that the private sector isn't meant to do, to deal with the quality of life. There are things that a civilized society needs that we can only do if we do them together. And we do them together, that's called government. So that's why Mitt Romney opposed the successful effort to keep the automobile industry going, because he failed to see the importance of a private sector, public sector cooperation. That's why he belittled President Obama's concern for fired and laid off public employees and the services they provide, when he said, oh, he just wants more teachers and firefighters and cops. Because we have had millions of private sector jobs created, but our unemployment has been higher than it should be, in part because hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hardworking public employees have been let go by Republican policies. And finally, there is a sector on which I worked hardest, the financial sector. The single biggest cause of our economic collapse was the failure of the Republican right wing. Unfortunately, some Democrats joined in to allow the public sector appropriately to regulate the private sector. I want a strong financial community, but I don't want subprime loans being given to people who can't pay them back. I don't want derivatives being engaged in by companies that can't back up when they get in trouble, like AIG. I want an independent consumer agency that will protect the individual saver and borrower from abuse. I don't want municipalities to be advised by unscrupulous people who get them into trouble and they lose money. We began in 2009 to put in place a set of rules to prevent the kind of abuse that led to the economic disaster. Mitt Romney, and for all I know, Mitt Romney, opposes all of that. He has called for the repeal of financial reform, for allowing an unregulated financial community to go back to where they were. Every mistake the Republicans made to bring us into trouble, to resist our getting out of trouble, and to keep us from getting into trouble again, Mitt Romney supports. And he reminds me of an important historical statement. When the kings of France came back into power after the French Revolution, brought back by the excesses of that revolution, they began to make all the same mistakes they'd made before. And someone said they appear to have forgotten everything. And someone said, no, they couldn't forget anything because they never learned anything. The current right-wing Tea Party-dominated Republican not only hasn't learned from the mistakes of the past, they are determined to repeat them. We will not let that happen. Thank you.